tonight's candidate forum in Klamath. I'd like to thank you for coming out here tonight, and we have two panels for you. The first panel is for the candidates for sheriff, Mr. Eric Apperson and Mr. Sheriff Dean Wilson. What we're going to do is we've got a list of prepared questions that are on your agenda and your agenda for tonight. And what we'll be doing is simply asking the questions on the agenda. We're going to give the candidates about a minute and a half or so to answer the questions. We want to make sure they answer, so we'll be friendly with that time period. And we're going to alternate the questions, who starts the questions with the candidates. We'll start out with a candidate statement so they can tell you a little bit about themselves or whatever else they want to tell you. Ground rules are simple. We just want to have a respectful conversation. We want to give these guys an opportunity to address the questions and answer the questions, say what they need to say. If you, as an audience member, have any questions, we'd ask you to write those down on some of the card stock that we have over here and simply return it to that table. After we get done with the 9 prepared questions, we added one more question on you. The 9 prepared questions, then we'll open it up and we'll simply go through the card stock and ask these guys the questions off of that. I do again want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I'd like to thank the candidates for being here tonight in Klamath as well. And with that, I didn't think who was going to go first on the opening statements, but what I would like to do is, Mr. Apperson, could you make an opening statement?
Can you hear me? Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Eric Apperson, and I hope to be your next Del Norte County Sheriff. I'm 36 years old, and I've lived in this community my entire life. I've been in law enforcement my adult life. I'm currently a sergeant with the Crescent City Police Department, and I deeply believe in community-based policing. I hope to bring that model to the sheriff's office. And I think it's time to bring our community together. Crime is not just a law enforcement problem, it's a community problem. I hope to repair the disconnect between local law enforcement and the public that we're sworn to serve. I plan on doing that by running a transparent agency and developing community buy-in. I'd like to introduce successful crime prevention programs, citizen review committees, volunteer auxiliary groups, cultural awareness training, and proactive law enforcement. My plan is to focus on the task at hand and the task in front of me. And my simple goal is to make our county a safer place for all people that live here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sheriff Wilson.
Hello, I'm Sheriff Wilson. I want to thank the York Tribe for putting on this forum. 12 years ago, I was elected as sheriff. One of my major commitments was to work hand in hand with the tribes. I did that. I kept that promise. I've kept and I had agreements with every single tribe except for Resigate Rancho Reed. I was the first sheriff in Del Norte County history to cross-deputize the Yurok Tribal Police. You know, we have agreements and we must work together in order to build our communities. You know, when we look at what's going on in our communities, you know, we need the resources that we have in our communities, federal, state, local, tribal, all to work together. And we've done that, but we can do a better job. Now, as sheriff, I brought crime down by 30% and violent crime down by 40% over the 12 years that I've been a sheriff in Del Norte County. Now, we can continue to do that, but we do that by being smart, by working our personnel the right way, and by focusing on major crimes. And I've got that done by putting together an effective unit, both as sheriff, but also within the communities. And I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity so that I can, once again, help Del Norte County be a better, safer community for all of us. Thank you.
So what I'd like to do now is, because Mr. Apperson, you got to go first, what I'm going to do is ask Mr. Wilson, Sheriff Wilson, I'm going to flip a coin, call it, and then if you win, you choose. Go first or second. Heads. Okay. So we've got a list of questions here in your, on your agenda, and some of the questions I'm going to try to set them up just briefly. Klamath, like other areas in Delaware County, is rural, is away from Crescent City, and as a result, sometimes there are longer response times and things of that nature, and the citizens of the community often have wait times for sheriffs and others to show up. What is your vision for providing law enforcement in outlying communities in Delaware County?
You know, this has always been a problem. I don't care what sheriff has sat in this seat, and it will continue to be a problem as long as we struggle, as we do in Delaware County, to simply maintain what we have. Every year, costs rise. Every year, we face a struggle just to continue to maintain the limited services we have. Currently, we have 3 deputies on every single hour of the day. That's an average. Sometimes it's only 2. The city police has the same amount just for the small jurisdiction that it serves. 80% of our calls for service occur around major area of population in Delaware County. About 7% of our calls for service are down here in Klamath. About the same, similar, up in Smith River, and the rest go up to Gasky and Hyuchi. So you can see, you know, the diversity and the calls that draw away most of the attention is around major population areas. That's why we have to, and we have, and we do, work with our communities. We also work with all the local law enforcement, state and federal. We cannot do this job alone. There is not a single enough resources. We went up to the Golden Marijuana Gardens here just the other day. In and amongst those units were Curry County, tribal, U.S. Forest Service, Delaware County Sheriffs, as well as state parks. It's too much for one agency to do, so we partner and do a better job. And that's why crime is down. That's why we've been able to do this for 12 years, and I'll continue as sheriff. Thank you.
I feel like we can no longer justify a lack of quality coverage on low staffing or financial issues. I think every organization shares that struggle, and it's time to take a fresh look at creative ideas. I think we need to run more effectively with the resources that we currently have. I think we need to focus more diligently on cross-deputization of Yurok tribal police. I think that causes a ripple effect that has a byproduct of more law enforcement in the county. We need to create a volunteer auxiliary program that allows existing staff to operate more efficiently by assisting with non-emergency duties. That's that community buy-in that I mentioned earlier. We need to install, mature, and maintain crime prevention programs, such as neighborhood watches. Those reduce crime before it happens. It's a proactive approach. I will not only focus on educating our community, but empowering them. Obviously, extra patrol in outlying areas needs to be mandated as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Eric, you get the first crack at this next question. Klamath is in the Yurok Reservation, and under Public Law 280, the state has jurisdiction and responsibility for criminal law on the reservation. Okay. Klamath is in the Yurok Reservation within the Yurok Reservation boundaries, and so the state has law enforcement responsibilities under Public Law 280. And so the next question is, under Public Law 280, the state has responsibilities to enforce criminal law on lands within the reservation. Can you tell us how you're going to implement 280 within the Yurok Reservation?
Public Law 280 has been on the books since the 50s. Simply put, if somebody calls for help within the Yurok Reservation, that caller is mandated by law to get the response anybody else would get. The primary issue is quality of service, with special focus on response time. 30 minutes after the call is made, whatever the call was made for is probably over. We need to shorten up that response time. Again, the answer is an increased staffing level, and I believe that comes through cross-deputization. We need to focus on that. Installing programs like crime-free multi-housing and volunteer programs that would serve as extra eyes and ears for law enforcement. I would also help create an Explorer program. And I know that that's an indirect path to that solution, but I believe the key is educating our youth. And if we can start them on the right track, then eventually the byproduct of that is lesser crime as they become adults. Most importantly, we need to be clear, and we need to have a constant desire to work with our residents that reside on reservations. We need to strive to understand their specific needs and priorities when it comes to law enforcement. Thank you.
Nice job.
PL 280. This responsibility for providing criminal enforcement on tribal lands falls to the state, falls to the sheriffs within the different individual counties on reservation land. It falls to our responsibility. Now, through our agreements and through cross-deputization, we then allow the tribe to do that enforcement on tribal lands. We have and had an agreement in place, and that agreement needs to be continue to be nurtured and continue to go forward, so that we not only guarantee the quality of service being provided to the community, but we make sure that those providing the service are the same, whether you talk about a deputy sheriff responding or a Yurok tribal police officer responding. The quality of service should be the same, identical. That is up to the sheriff to make sure that that kind of quality assurance is guaranteed. That needs to be done, because not only does the community need to have that assurance, but as sheriff, the liability rests with us in the county, and we need to know that that assurance is going to be done. Now, PL 280 is a very complicated issue, and it continues to get more and more complicated as time goes on, because the federal government does not step in and make clear the duties and responsibilities. You know, I want to support the tribe in their efforts to make themselves a sovereign and make that sovereignty mean something. But as we move in that direction, it conflicts with PL 280. So it is a very complicated issue, especially when you look at other issues such as federal select status, the new federal status that can be given to individual tribal officers, and many of them seek it out. Those things tend to be much more complicated when you talk about the implementation of PL 280. Thank you.
A major problem on the Yurok Reservation is marijuana growing. Whoops, thank you. A major problem, I can hear myself talk all the time. A major problem on the Yurok Reservation is marijuana cultivation, illegal, large-scale commercial operations. It certainly is an issue in Humboldt County, to some degree in Dolan County as well. You have Trinity County and, you know, in several counties in California. What is your position on marijuana eradication? And as sheriff, are you willing to assist the Yurok tribe in marijuana eradication efforts on and near the reservation?
Absolutely. You know, the nice thing about working hand in hand with the tribe, especially on the enforcement of marijuana, is it's federal land, and federal land has zero toleration for marijuana. It's not an issue as it is on the rest of the private lands with 214 grows and the other things. It's just not tolerated, so it makes it very easy to work hand in hand with the tribe on marijuana eradication efforts. You know, we have the majority of our lands are public lands, and so there's zero toleration for marijuana grows on public lands. We just spent the last month here flying over and making marijuana eradication efforts, and I know that Tribal was doing a job up in Humboldt County making marijuana eradication. So absolutely, you know, and the resources that we put together, the teams that we can put together to deal with marijuana eradication, because it's a problem not only on tribal lands but also on our park lands. You know, working together absolutely towards marijuana eradication is not it's a no-brainer as far as our efforts, because it's a major problem in Delaware County.
My position on marijuana eradication is that my job is to enforce the law, not to interpret it. I'm absolutely willing to assist the Yurok tribe in their efforts. will assist by offering additional staff for specific operations and training from experts in my department. I'd like to blend the agencies together in their effort to combat this, and part of my plan is to develop a multi-agency task force. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The town of Klamath and surrounding communities are composed of tribal and non-tribal community members. There are strong feelings throughout the community about law enforcement and things of that nature. How do you plan to integrate both tribal and non-tribal perspectives and concerns in considering the safety of outlying communities in Delaware County, like the Klamath area? And will you deputize tribal officers who are post-certified, pass background checks, and meet the qualifications that your officers meet?
Cross-deputizing Yurok tribal police officers to satisfy the post-certifications and pass background checks is an immediate goal of mine. I've developed a 180-day plan that outlines my first 6 months of office, and cross-deputization is a high priority in that plan. I've spoken with Chief Maston about offering cultural training to the deputies in Delaware County. This sort of training would be a regular part of ongoing training for our deputies, and one of the many components encompassing all cultures within our communities. So simply put, yes.
Thank you. Now I'm going to get confused. Keep me on track.
As far as the tribal, it is the agreement that we put in place. You know, that agreement didn't come easy. It took 3 years and 3 chiefs before we kind of finally got that agreement put into place. Why? Because I pushed it. Because I felt it was important that we had tribal police cross-deputized, and we had a successful program. Unfortunately, 4 years ago, that program went away when the contract ceased to be honored by Europe. Now we're hopefully entering new negotiations, new talks, new discussions, and we hope that that will bear fruit, because it's important. It's important to us, it's important to the Yurok tribe, that they have that ability to do what they need to do. And I want to see that that gets done. I have never stood in the way. I've always supported them in their efforts, and I will continue to support them in their efforts. However, when we look at this, it has to be that they meet those post standards, just like my deputies do. Because we have to assure that the quality of officers out here serving the communities are identical and the same. We meet that, cross-deputization will be assured. Absolutely. That's the thing I've supported from the beginning. I think any community that we serve, no matter how diverse it is, from our Hmong to our Latino to our Indian tribal communities, we have a responsibility to serve everyone. And we do, and we will continue to do so. Part of that is making sure that we partner in the most important ways, that we share those responsibilities, whether we're talking about domestic violence or drugs, or working as law enforcement on the river to make sure everybody is safe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In the 90s, the U.S. Forest Service went through a planning process. And as part of that planning process, the Forest Service decided that the communication facilities located on Red Mountain would be removed. They would be removed because there were cultural and religious values for the Yurok and others in that area. And as a result, there's a need to identify a way to replace some of those communication transmittal facilities. What is your position regarding the communication issues and location of the Red Mountain matter? How would you resolve the public and law enforcement communications for Delaware County? And who would you work for? Who would you work with? For is a point.
The Red Mountain issue is critical for the communication and public safety of our community going forward. That mountaintop has been identified as the only mountaintop that provides the needed and absolute communication, especially into those areas that are of Klamath, like the Klamath Glen and the Hunter Creek area. Without that site, we lose communication into those most critical areas. We lose a portion of our community. Back in 1995, when the land management plan came out, they failed to identify the top of Red Mountain as a transmitter site. The top of Red Mountain, that transmitter site, is maintained by CAL FIRE. It's not ours. 12 other agencies, state, federal, and local, are served by Red Mountain, as well as several private cell towers and other services that are provided that are critical to our infrastructure. Right now, the state is looking at an alternative to Red Mountain because in 2022, their lease is up, and the U.S. Forest Service says they have to be off the top of that mountain. The alternatives are to build on Alder Camp near the hilltop in Alder and 2 other sites in Humboldt County. That will be devastating to our communications. The projected coverage by those sites does not give Delaware County the necessary and needed coverage, and we will not have communication with those sites into those areas of Klamath that need to be served. So I'm supporting the efforts by the county to make sure that we try to maintain the top of that Red Mountain as a communication town. Thank you.
It's my understanding that the communication towers were built on land considered to be sacred. As a community, we need to take a real look at resolving this issue with respect to 2 things: cultural sensitivity as well as public safety. The United States Forest Service, State of California, our local government, tribal community, and public safety need to work together to make a plan. I understand that the answer isn't clear, but I also understand that our Native community is open to help resolve the challenges. Obviously, it can't be resolved overnight, but I believe the seriousness of the situation warrants a real effort. The goal is to make and execute an acceptable plan that's equitable and in the best interest of everyone involved. Thank you.
The next question is, I'm going to get it by the time this night's over. So the next question is, many community members are concerned that Delaware County Sheriff will not dispatch post-certified tribal officers to 911 calls in Klamath. What is your position?
I can't even begin to count the amount of times that I've heard this concern expressed by our community members. My position continues to be simple and transparent. If tribal officers are eligible to be cross-deputized, then why isn't that happening? If they have graduated a California Post Police Academy, passed a background check, and completed training patrol, then they have the very pedigree that our deputies do. That makes them an asset to us all. Clearly stated, more cops in Klamath means more cops in Delaware County. That being said, I understand it's about quality personnel over quantity, but I've met with several of the officers here at the YTP, and I feel very optimistic about the transition to cross-deputization. During my term as your sheriff, I'd hope to have this issue resolved very quickly. Thank you.
Currently, with the YTP, we have 1 cross-deputized officer, that's Sergeant Lee. And we dispatch him to all calls when he is on. The other calls are then handled by Delaware County Sheriff's Office personnel. However, at many times we have had and do utilize YTP when they're in the area and they can respond and are able to respond. So, as far as dispatching and utilizing resources that are out there that are cross-deputized, we absolutely do that and never have stopped.
Thank you. What will you do to foster a productive working relationship with the Yurok Tribe Chief of Police and Yurok officers?
There are a lot of issues that we need to deal with within the Yurok tribe. One is communication. We have to have trust, and we have to have communication. I am a member of an organization in Delaware County. It's LEAP, law enforcement administrators of Delmar, we meet once a month. You know, that is an open invitation to the representatives, and we have had representatives from YTP be there, but not the chief. You know, we need to have the administrators there so that communications are there, that communications flow. It cannot be stagnant, it can't be one-sided. It has to be built on trust, it has to be built on open communication, it has to be on lines of communication that are constant and open. If it doesn't happen, then problems occur. You know, I see the tribe as wanting to do so much, and I want to be absolutely supportive in their efforts, but we have to make sure that they meet the same criteria and standards that anybody else serving in Delaware County has to do. We're not getting it done, but it's not me as sheriff that's impeding the process. It has to be built on trust and communication. One of the biggest difficulties since I've taken over as sheriff of Delaware County is we're on the 8th chief with YTP. It's hard to build trust, consistency, communication when we're constantly changing in our organizations. I had great working relations with Thorne McCoke. He is a reserve deputy. Jerry Abasola is one of our deputies. He was a deputy in YTP. You have good personnel. They can do a good job. They just have to have the support from the organization that they work for to make sure they meet the minimum requirements that we ask for within our MOU. And it's just not being done. But it's not being done by our side. We're not impeding the process. Communication and trust absolutely have to be the way going forward. Thank you.
I would like to start by aligning our missions and vision for law enforcement in Delaware County. I would institute multi-agency trainings, especially with regards to range training, use of force, and legal updates. Again, I would like to see cultural training for our deputies, and I'd like to see the field training programs work together when either agency hires a new employee. I would work with Chief Maston to send our staff to instructor schools and utilize those instructors for both agencies, again bringing more of a team building sort of atmosphere. I also believe this would reduce operational costs for both departments. Simply put, we just need to integrate our training. When we have a perishable skills training, all agencies need to participate. And that's how we're going to keep those checks and balances maintained. Thank you.
As sheriff, would you be willing to meet with Klamath and other outlying communities, residents on tribes on a quarterly basis or so?
It's hard to make this last a minute and a half. Absolutely. Communication is the key to success. I actually plan on quarterly town hall meetings throughout the entire county, including Klamath. I believe a sheriff needs to not only be present, but accessible. I also believe it's important to travel to the outlying areas as opposed to expecting the outlying areas to travel to you. I'm willing to work with anyone and everyone to make our community a safer place.
Many of the things that were just discussed we do already. Through LEAP, Law Enforcement Administrators of Delmar, we put on perishable skills training that every agency is invited to and every agency is allowed to participate in. Those things are done. Those YTP officers that are members, that are cross-deputized, they are reserves with the Delaware County Sheriff's Office. And as such, they come to our training, whether you're talking about perishable skills, whether you're talking about advanced training, they come to our training. It's a requirement as part of the MOU and agreement. So those kind of issues are critical. But it's also, how do we, if I'm going to go out and come to these communities and meet them, absolutely. I've always done that. Any place I've been invited, I go to, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, whether it's with groups, whether it's Neighborhood Watch, if I'm invited and I'm welcome, I come. Thank you.
Sir? So the last of our prepared question
is, what do you consider the most important issue facing Delaware County and the Sheriff's Office?
Right now, this election. Because we are about to determine how we're going to go forward in this community. Who's going to lead? You know, there is no more critical decision at this point in time than who's going to be sheriff of Delaware County. I have the experience, I have the education, I have the knowledge, and more importantly, we brought crime down for the last 12 years. I know how to do the job, I know how our personnel is. I know that department in and out. You know, this is a sensitive and critical time for Delaware County. We face a lot of challenges. You know, right now, if you look around, you have a brand new chief coming in. Soon you'll have a brand new CHP. You have a brand new director of health and human service, mental health. The major components of probation and the DA are all brand new. It's critical that we have experience in Delaware County, because when there's a crisis, you want to make sure you have the best personnel in place to handle that major crisis. Not only have I done that job, but I've done that job very well for you in this community. That's why I'm hoping that you'll make that decision to keep me in there come November 4th. Thank you.
I believe the biggest issue currently facing the sheriff's office is providing quality law enforcement throughout the entire county with the ongoing budget issues that we're faced with. I believe that now more than ever, there's a need to work with our community to find those creative solutions. When it comes to criminal activity, the byproducts of drug abuse seem to be the #1 contributor. Reducing drug-related criminal activity has to include education, treatment, and enforcement. These components are nearly impossible without community support. That community support is the answer to the biggest issue facing our sheriff's office right now. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. So we're going to spend about 15 minutes or so with questions from the audience, and what we asked people to do was to write their questions on a card stock, and so I'm just going to go in whatever order it is here. And keeping with our batting order, Eric, you're first up on here. And there are two questions